Okay, good morning again, everybody. My name is Liz Gracia. I am founder of the Mind, Body, Spirit Network. And I'm also calling myself the trumpeter of truth today. So today we're talking about how to be happy, the truth of the matter, when you understand levels of consciousness. So I have a little slideshow, which, I don't want to do too much slideshow stuff, so hold on. Do you want to follow a little bit? Okay. I love the Buddha. Whoops, you know what? I didn't share my screen. I keep doing this. Sorry, you guys. I get ahead of myself. Hold on. Share the screen. Okay, there we go. Okay, there we go. I love my Buddha. Buddha, by the way, is of the highest consciousness, just in case you were wondering. So you can't help but be happy when you're at the Buddha level. It's just everything's good. And I'm calling myself the trumpeter of truth. Again, my name is Liz Gracia, and I'm a student of consciousness. What the heck is that? And why would I be? I want to tell you a quick story of why I'm even doing this and how it came to me that this is what I want to share. I have experienced, I think it was 2003. I experienced a quantum spiritual awakening after being in 4 months of grief and loss, and sorrow and victimhood, and poor me and pity party because my marriage was going to end. And I couldn't snap, I wasn't snapping out of it. And my husband's like, I'm done. I'm like, okay, I got it. And the truth of his telling me he was done was all, I felt it 100%. I'm like, okay, there's no climbing my way out of this one. I got to face it. I got to face the truth. So after 4 months of grief and loss and sorrow and feeling sorry for myself, I had a quantum spiritual awakening. And I'm going to show you that on the map of consciousness, how it is that it was quantum. And I knew it at the time. I'm like, holy moly. You don't go from where I was up to the presence of divinity and grace and love and joy, which is not of this realm at all, I can assure you, from there, without it being quantum. But the backside of that is that if what I've kind of come to, I needed to understand what I was experiencing. This is on the answer of, how did I come into being a student of consciousness? But paired with that very high state of awareness, I was swung like a pendulum into the depths of hell, literally. Not of this world, depths of hell. And it was enormous suffering and ridiculous horror for a human being to have to encounter. So I don't want to dwell there, but I want to just bring it up, because if I can pull myself out of the literal depths of hell and be happy, everyone else can. And I'll show you kind of visually on the map of consciousness, because consciousness is actually a science that has calibrations to it, and you don't have to wonder anymore if you're floundering around in a pool of crud or a pool of joy and happiness. So that's how I became a student of consciousness. I needed to understand how did I create this? How did I get in the presence of divinity, like stunning beauty, exquisite wonder, beyond words, grace, and then be thrown into the depths of hell in the presence of something you don't even want to know about. So that's how I became a student of that. And I'm not really the trumpeter of my own truth. Well, I kind of am, but just by being who I am. But Dr. David R. Hawkins, maybe many of you know him and his work. I'm a student of his. And he is dedicated his life to the science of truth and calibrating truth and consciousness at all its levels. And he's written more than a dozen books on the topic, and most of them are of such a high consciousness, 1% of the population might get it, which is okay. If you want to try to get it, you're bringing yourself into higher awareness by trying to get it. And I knew I had to read it regardless because I've already been up in higher consciousness, and I needed to kind of align myself so that I could deal with it in the event I find myself there again, which, it's pretty fantastic, but not for me if I have to encounter the opposite of it. It was not, I couldn't bear that. So Hawkins is a sweetheart. He passed about 5 years ago. He's all about the love. He is of higher consciousness. He is brilliant. And I'm going to read his bio in case you haven't heard of him before. And I know people that'll be watching this video were like, who is he to proclaim truth? Well, let me tell you who he is. Dr. Hawkins is an MD, PhD, and director of the Institute for Spiritual Research. He's founder of the Path of Devotional Non-Duality. He was renowned as a pioneering researcher in the field of consciousness, as well as author, lecturer, clinician, physician, and scientist. He served as an advisor to Catholic, Protestant, and Buddhist monasteries. He's appeared on major network television and radio programs, including Barbara Walters, Oprah Winfrey. He served as an advisor, he lectured widely at such places as Westminster Abbey, the Oxford Forum, the University of Notre Dame, and Harvard University. People from all walks of life and nationalities honor Dr. Hawkins as a teacher of advanced awareness, exemplified in the title Foremost Teacher of the Way to Enlightenment.
Excuse me, Liz, can I just jump in and ask you to mute everybody? There's just a little bit of background noise. Thank you.
And I don't know why I'm crying when I read that, but okay. I can't see my darn, okay, I have to stop sharing. While I'm crying, I'm going to stop sharing. I think I'm crying because I love and honor what he's done for us. Okay. Sorry, you guys. All right, let me manage my participants.
Hey, what has he done for you? What has he done for you personally?
Saved me from suffering. Okay, that's a surprise. Okay, well, cool. Big time. All right, Cheryl, I'm going to make you the co-host.
Okay. It feels to me like when you first met him and started reading his words that it rang true for you and it went in through your soul, as if maybe you even helped him develop that work. I also want to say that the truth that you're speaking of is very prevalent now that we're moving into the year 2018, that is the year of truth. A lot of truth, and we're going to have strength from being who we are, being true to ourselves. And you're going to see that a lot, I feel, in our planet, as a people, as living here on earth. A lot of strength will come from truth. So good for you. You're ahead of the curve. You're
what's so interesting, Cheryl, I'm a pioneer. I'll own that. And what you just said to me, I heard my own spirit kind of yell at me in a good way. I helped do this. And you just told me that. I was like, whoa. Yeah. So, sorry for the sidebar, but Cheryl, thank you for bringing that up and acknowledging that we are here to end this friggin' suffering is nonsense. Suffering is ridiculous. So, anyway, cool. Okay, I'm gonna own that because it took a lot of friggin' power for me to go through what I did, big time, and I'm happy to have done it. Let me tell you. As I was going through it, I said to God, I'm like, because I need support in that situation. I said, God, let me be the last one to experience this. So, you ask and it is given. So let's lighten it up. because no one else is going to go through what I went through. I hope, unless you want it. Some egos out there are like, oh yeah, I'll show you. I'm like, hey, have at it. And then when you find yourself in the depths of hell and need some help, you can give me a call. All right, let's get back to the happy side. But I love and honor Dr. Hawkins. Holy crap. And myself for having gone through this. And it's no wonder I got together with him. So he passed. He's in La La Land right now. And I'm here to kind of dumb it down for everyone to make it simple. All right, back to the presentation. Back to our show. All right, sorry, you guys. I got a kick out of myself. Here we go. All right. So Hawkins, he ain't no schlep, bottom line. He is of the highest consciousness. And people are like, oh yeah. I'm like, yeah, he's a living Christ, this one. Okay. And I'm not going to necessarily be a living Christ because I'm here to be the funny one, make it lighter. Because it can be kind of heavy. You know, wanting to become enlightened, as Hawkins will tell you, is a radical pursuit. And I can tell you, what I've experienced is radical. Whoops. All right. Okay. So when I created this, I found these great little quotes in Caroline Myss's book, Archetypes. Who Are You? I was reading this. And she's met probably millions of people in her lifetime doing what she does. And everyone's got the same, everyone wants to know the truth. So how does the divine make itself known to us? Well, I think understanding levels of consciousness will help answer this question, because at the higher level of consciousness, divinity is present. I can attest to that. What is the order of life really about? Again, when you understand levels of consciousness, every level is its own kind of field of being. And every level has its own sort of glass ceiling to it. You're going to go from one level to another when you let go of your own beliefs about yourself and limitations about who you are. That's really what the glass ceilings are, is when you're willing to let go of limitations and thoughts about yourself that aren't true. And if there is no logical order, then how do I know what signs to follow on the road of my life? Well, if you understand consciousness and how it works, there are levels to consciousness. There is order to consciousness. And you can stop falling back into lower levels, because that's where you realize, which way am I going? Because you choose a path that's like a lesser, you choose a path that unconsciously is going to sabotage you. And that's how you get, all these forks in the road. But being sabotaged is good, because you learn stuff. And when you're an eternal being living forever and a day, infinity and a day, and I've been shown what eternal life feels like. And when you feel it, I felt it a couple times. I'm like, whoa, put the brakes on. Let's slow it down. Let's enjoy where we are. And that's why, you can have struggles in life because you're an eternal being. And when you're up in La La Land, you're like, I need to go down there on Earth and see what struggles are like a little bit. Because, La La Land is La La Land. So don't judge your journey. Bottom line, don't judge yourself at all, period. But we'll get to that. We're very good at judging ourselves, that's for sure. And for some reason, this darn presentation. Okay. All right, here's a question. And Cheryl, you can unmute everyone to this one. I want to hear what you think your biggest obstacles to being happy are. Who wants to chime in? Anyone? Deborah?
I think that you mentioned judgment. It's my judgment of myself and my fear of actually not being good enough.
Yes, that's one of them. Macy, did you want to chime in?
Sure. I feel like currently a feeling of not being safe.
Okay. We're going to address all of this. Does anyone else want to chime in? I can't see everyone, Cheryl. Was anyone else wanting to chime in? You're on mute, though.
Sorry, I don't see anything on the chats just yet. So
okay, John, did you want to chime in? I see you're unmuted there.
Yeah, I think people are not happy because they don't allow themselves, because they're more comfortable with fear. They're more comfortable with the anxiety that they're experiencing. It's familiar to them. And maybe it's not a question of that they don't deserve happiness. It's just an unknown quantity to them.
Yeah. Yes. Happiness is another level of consciousness that if you don't kind of invite it into your life, you're not going to see it. There's a glass ceiling around you if you're not experiencing it. Same with love, same with anything. There's different levels, and we're going to get to that. So the point of this is to really get the levels of consciousness, and you have to choose. However, you need help getting there too, because we're in a primitive world, really.
Liz?
Yep.
I think I just wanted to add one of my biggest obstacles to being happy is all of the what I think I am supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Not necessarily doing just what I would like to do.
Yeah.
And feeling overwhelmed with busyness in all of the things that I am supposed to be doing and accomplishing, and feeling societal pressure around it.
That's such crud. All right, we're going to help you get through this, you guys. This is all false beliefs.
Mm.
This is all stuff manifesting, and I'll tell you where it all comes from in a minute. This is going to be like I used to watch The Guiding Light. It was a soap opera growing up. The Guiding Light. We'll be back after a few. I'm your guiding light here. There was a reason I watched The Guiding Light. You know? All right, let's keep it going. So how can you be happy then? All right, well, I'm going to help try to answer that question best I can.
Oops.
Whoop, what are you oopsing for?
I muted you by accident. Sorry.
Oh, did you miss something? Well, did you hear me? I say we have some therapists in the room here today?
No, I didn't hear that.
All right, so we do have some therapists in the room today. So what I'm going to discuss today, you can do on your own, unless you're seriously in lower levels of consciousness. And if you are, you need help. And you'll understand it when I kind of give you visuals on that. If you're in really low levels of consciousness, you have to have higher levels to get you out of it. And Albert Einstein quoted, "You cannot solve the problem from the level of consciousness that created it." And the problem with lower consciousness is they don't know that they need help necessarily. Well, they do and they don't, And that's the lower self wanting to suffer and not get the help it needs. So, all right. So we're going to start with understanding levels of consciousness and how they work in your life. But before we get started on the map, I want to share the map of consciousness. And this is what Dr. Hawkins' work, decades of work, which is millions of calibrations with thousands of test subjects, he came up with this map of consciousness. And it's the scientifically derived measurement of the levels of consciousness, and it's a logarithmic scale from 0 to 1,000. 1,000 is the highest state of consciousness a human being can attain and still remain in the body. Okay? And it's logarithmic. So 1,000 on the map of consciousness is 10 to the 1,000th power. So if you guys ever did this in school, it's 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 times 10. It's huge. And the power format that he's using, I've never heard of before, and I don't understand it. It's like a gigahoozle. It's like 1,000 gigahoozle megahoozles. So it's an energy frequency that he's measuring, but I'm like, I don't know what it means, so I'm making it up. Suffice it to say, if you're at 1,000 gigahoozles, you're rocking the planet, literally. Okay, so let's start down here where there's misery. I don't really want to start in misery, but you need to know this because this is where a lot of us are hanging out. And this is the levels of the ego. This is ego, period. This is where the ego lives. So pride is the highest level in the low levels. And you can't judge yourself if you're feeling shame or guilt or apathy or grief, because all of us feel all of these emotions. But you don't want to hang out here. And you see these downward arrows. When you get into the negatively oriented fields, attractor fields, it's like a toilet bowl. It brings you down. I like to liken it like crabs in a bucket. You ever seen crabs in a bucket? Or they're going to grab those, take their claws and try to bring you down with them. That's a great metaphor for low levels of consciousness. And everything in this area is victimhood. All of it. Doesn't matter. It's all victimhood. So I watched a video recently of Hawkins, and Hawkins is all over YouTube, and I highly recommend you watch him because he's hysterical and he's cute and he's brilliant. But I didn't know that suicide was negative 50 on the map of consciousness. And I've always tried to figure out, geez, I was never suicidal because I wouldn't kill myself. But I know I was experiencing, it felt like negative 300 to negative 500 is the frequencies I was in the presence of. And if I was in that presence for much longer than another second, I would have found the nearest gun and shot myself to get out of it. It's that bad. So I think it's a rare human being that would experience that. So I don't want anyone to be afraid of that. Right? But you for sure do not want to stay in shame, guilt, apathy, grief, any of those without help. So I want to introduce, if you guys, I'm going to share a link with you guys later. And that link is to the 12 steps in Alcoholics Anonymous. And Hawkins calibrated the program of Alcoholics Anonymous at 540, and I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but it's hugely powerful. Tons of power in that program. And when he was talking about Alcoholics Anonymous and addiction is pretty low. It's like in the hundreds, 140 maybe. It's not good. You don't want to be addicted to anything. But Alcoholics Anonymous says, I am powerless. You have to admit you are powerless. And then when you're down here in these lower levels, there's no power here. I want to say it out loud. None. No power. It's a downward slippery slope. You don't want to be here. And I don't want to scare you with fear, but I'm going to tell you how to get out of here. So if you find yourself in these feelings, that's okay, but you want to just kind of sit with them and let them pass. And we'll get into that in a second. So pride, I used to think pride was a good thing. I'm like, oh, isn't it good to be have pride? To an extent it is. It's certainly a good thing if you're in fear. So if you're in grief, it's a good thing to get angry because that's a sign you're getting better. Anywhere, if you're feeling shame and then you get a little guilty about it and then you're apathetic, it's a sign that you're getting better. So you need to understand these different levels. And if you're going through the grief process, I know one of the steps in grief, and Marie, I think you know this, one of the steps is to get into anger. So that's a good sign when you're in grief and loss. But if you're if you're 100 and below, you got to get help, period. You got to get help. You need someone of higher consciousness to get you out of there. All right. These are the higher levels of consciousness. Courage is what you need to get out of lower consciousness. You have to have courage to take responsibility for how you feel and get the heck out of there. And you got to stand in integrity and just admit that I've been a victim. And that's part of the Alcoholics Anonymous. I think I realized after watching Hawkins that any addiction to lower levels of anything in lower level of consciousness is an addiction to victimhood. And we all have it. because that's what this planet is, for the most part. We all have some part of it, unless you've done a lot of serious inner work. Victimhood, like, we love it. It juices the ego. Oh, you know, you put on your little party hat, you have a pity party. Like, those are fun. When everyone's like, oh, Liz, you poor thing. I'm like, oh, I know, it's terrible. Woe is me. So when you read the 12 steps to alcoholism, it's the same powerful thing. You got to come to courage and realize you are powerless. So look at the power here. All right. Courage is 10 to the 200th power. You're on the upward swing now. Fields of consciousness and attractor patterns in courage are coming to you now because you are claiming it as yours. I'm going to be courage and truthful. And once you enter into truth, so everything above 200, it calibrates as being true and freaking powerful. I'm talking F, capital F, freaking powerful. I want to really tell you guys this, all right? And if there's a aspect of yourself that you're judging, I ask you to get courageous about it and forgive yourself because you didn't know any better. And if you can't stop judging it, just be neutral about it. Like, okay, you can, everyone here has the power to be neutral about themselves. Don't hold a position. Because neutrality is power. Very powerful, hugely powerful. In fact, our country is founded on the power of 200, courage. That's all you need to create a country of freedom like we have. That's all you need is courage. And while we're here, I want to let you know that the ego thinks that they are 700. All right? It's a rare human being that's above 540. And I can attest that I experienced 540, and it is not of this world. It was pure 540, unadulterated 540. You're in the presence of divinity there. And if you think you're there, you're probably not, because ego likes to take credit for it, which is not to say you are not joyful and loving. You can be loving and joyful, but you got other stuff making up you're a snowflake of perfection and consciousness, and you're a mixed bag of all of it. So I just want to encourage you, and this is my little mantra to myself is, I am willing to accept that I have power. And I'm reasonable. I can be a reasonable person and loving. And that's enough for me. You know, I don't need to be 540 to be happy. I'm so happy to be above 200, let me tell you. Right there is a huge step. To come into courage and to admit you have negative feelings about yourself. That's the problem. So we're going to get to that. You want to hang out, you guys. If you want to manifest everything you want in your life, this is where you got to hang out. So I got really very important insights when I watched Hawkins recently, Dr. Hawkins' videos. All levels are in personal attractor fields. Okay? This is the law of attraction at play. And it's the laws of consciousness at play. Basically, this, similar, same thing, saying the same thing. All levels are in personal attractor fields. We are all freaking powerful because we're of spirit, all right? And when spirit puts its attention on a lower level attractor, you're asking for it, okay? That's what free will is. You have the free will to choose whatever level of consciousness you want to experience. And there's no judgment because beings of higher consciousness come into this life to be of lower consciousness. And if you have a higher perspective on life, beings of higher consciousness would gladly come here to be of lower consciousness to show you what you don't want. Just as an example. And a great testament to this is a book called The Afterlife of Billy Fingers. Fantastic, true story. And that book came into my life, my awareness, because I was judging myself. And when you read the book, you realize that Billy Fingers, a real guy, was of much higher consciousness as a spirit being than he was in life. And it was very helpful to realize you shouldn't judge anybody. You know, someone of extremely high consciousness comes into this world to be of lower consciousness to help you out, to show you what you don't want, especially if you're evolving, right? You're coming around the evolutionary wheel again. You're starting at the bottom. And I have a great story I want to share about this later, but you decide you're going to dive in and you want to just kind of find your way back to the truth. The truth that love is the truth. Love is the truth. So anyway, this is when I really understood free will. It has to do with what are you willing to choose, right? Are you willing to choose courage? Or do you want to choose the victim? Which is fine. Especially if you're really low and you start to get angry. You know, if you're sad and grief, get angry. That's good. Come into pride. You got to work your way out of there, though. You want to stay. If you find yourself stuck in victimhood or resentment, you need help getting out of there. And I'm going to help you do that today. So here's just some good little factoids about levels of consciousness. 85% of our planet calibrates below 200. We are primitive beings, which is okay. You know, if you ever read Conversations with God, which that was my saving grace when I first had that awakening, God, who's speaking in the book, is like, you guys are like, you're just beginning. You're not even in nursery school. So don't judge yourself, right? This is just, you know, we're here for eternity in a day. You got to start somewhere, and like, you know, you reach the highest states of consciousness and you're like, let's start over again. What else are you going to do? You're here forever in a day. 50% of the U.S. calibrates above 200. So that's, you know, encouraging. That's why people want to come here. People want to be free and loved to express themselves and be who they are. That's why people want to come to the U.S. There's other, you know, Canada and Australia, New Zealand, they calibrate pretty high as well. The consciousness level of the planet last I knew was around 207. And this is kind of an interesting factoid. The consciousness level of the planet jumped in November of 2003. And I had another quantum leap in November of 2003. And I don't want to take credit for it, but I was doing something at another level at that exact time. And I was experiencing very high levels of consciousness. And another spiritual teacher of mine said that at that time, I think it was called the harmonic convergence or the harmonic concordance or something. It was a flood of Christ consciousness into the planet. And that's just a level of consciousness. It's not religious. It's just a level of consciousness. There was a flood of Christ consciousness into the planet. So that would account for a leap in consciousness. And thank God, because below 200, we're like killing ourselves. It's not good. We want to, 207 can save the planet. So we're in a good state, you guys. If ever, you know, those naysayers and doomsdayers, we're in a much better place. So you can start looking on the bright side. Okay. One individual at 300 counterbalances 90,000 people below 200. So just FYI, Hawkins had a large group of students at one of his classes on the video, and there were probably 50 people in the class. And Hawkins will calibrate levels of consciousness for people right in front of them, and there's ways to do that. And he said that was filled with a bunch of truth seekers. So people of high integrity, they care about their own awareness, they care about the evolution of consciousness. That group calibrated around 365. All right? So the lower self will judge you for not being 700. So screw that. Screw that, and be very grateful to be above 200. That's enough. For me, I'm like, thank God, I think I'm above 200 now. On some topics, I have not been above 200, but I think it's safe to say that most of us, when you understand these levels, are in the, between 2 and 300. And I'm going to give you some examples of other people that are in the high 400s. One individual at 400 counterbalances 400,000 people below 200. So when I started to see these numbers, right, 500, you're counterbalancing the negativity of a lot of people here. 600, look at the jump. Holy crap. 600, you're counterbalancing 10 million people now. So when I saw this, I realized it's not like you don't want to help other people, because you do. You still want to help other people. But you can be of much greater service to the planet by working on yourself and cleaning up your own act, especially if you're already up here. Right? If you can clean up your act so that you go from 300 to 400, look how many more people planetarily you're helping. And if you're radical, you would aspire to the 600 level, but you're just doing that for love of humanity, right? It's a radical pursuit. Even 500 is a bit of a radical pursuit if you're not even close to that. So be grateful that you're just, in this group today and that you're even watching this, because you have greater awareness and a calling coming to you. But realize that just by being who you are and cleaning up your own yard, you can help the planet in a big way. Okay. All right. You're really cleaning up this planet when you aspire to get to this level. And Hawkins is love. Hawkins is love. All right. This is Hawkins. This is what Hawkins came here to, is to hold this frequency and shed the truth on it. Okay. I think I'm crying because I know why I'm crying anyway.
Liz,
I'm here for the same thing, right? I'm here for the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So the highest consciousness you can hold and still be in body is 1,000, and that would be Lord Buddha, Lord Jesus Christ, Lord Krishna, Lord Hawkins. I don't know that Hawkins continually calibrated that because you go in and out of that level, and that he kind of talks about going back into individual consciousness because he knows he's here for a purpose. And you can't be at that level and really function because it's phenomenal. And you don't want to. You want to just hang out there. It's like, holy crow, you kidding me? This is like, when I was in that consciousness, I'm like, oh my God, do I get to enjoy, I get to be this way? How do I be this way? I don't know. So anyway, to aspire to this is enough. If it's in your DNA to be this, you will do it, and it will be a radical pursuit. But don't let the lower self condemn you for not being here, because that's what it'll do. That's no good. I think that's what got me in dirty waters, muddy waters. I felt like I had to be enlightened for somebody else. I'm like, okay, that doesn't work. No. Okay. There were Hawkins calibrated in one of his books, there were 22 people over 600 on this planet, and 12 people over 700 on a planet of, what do we got, 7 billion people. Okay. The Dark Ages is interesting. He calibrated the Dark Ages, and I don't think anyone knew why they were called the Dark Ages, but there was no one over 600 during the Dark Ages on the planet. So lower consciousness running amok. I'm sure we were all there hanging out saying, this doesn't really feel good. Let's fix this. Okay. So 12 individuals at 700 equals one avatar at 1,000. I'm hoping you're getting the power, the quantum nature of the power of these individuals. They're huge. They are saviors. They are offsetting the negativity of this planet. One great avatar can, in fact, totally counterbalance the negativity of all mankind. Holy bleep, right? One human being. That's why the Buddha and Jesus and all those guys are revered. They're offset. They're here for humanity. They're here for all of us. And they're here to create an attractor field that we can all aspire to, because we're all evolving. So we need this frequency to be present so that we can actually go towards it, have something to aspire to. All right. Stop the negativity, gang. That's what I'm telling you. And how are we going to do that? Because, again, it's crabs in a bucket. Misery loves company. That is true. You know, if someone's miserable, they love, like, come on, come be miserable with me. You know, people like that. They're in misery. They want to take you with them. They want to complain. They want to judge. That's a sheer sign you want to get the heck out of Dodge. Change the conversation. Okay, so I want to just keep it up. Bottom line, gang, and I never believed this. Love is the truth. You want to power up your life in a big way? Align it with love, lovingness. You don't have to be a saint. You can just be loving. And the process I'm going to talk to you guys through today, and I'm running out of time, crap. I'm going to speed it along, will bring you into lovingness. And from someone who's come from the depths of hell, I experienced like loving it. Like I can say, I love you to everyone here, like no problem. Some people will cringe at that. And someone, you know, some of the teachers I worked with said they loved me and I didn't want to hear it. I'm like, that's kind of weird. I don't want to hear that. But I can tell you, when you start to let go of negativity in your life and realize it's all a bunch of crap it's not really true and it came from history of junk, you start to feel lovingness. It's a good thing. Lovingness is fun. 10 to the 500th power. I just want to, let you know, love is where it's at. Do the math. I wanted to do this out to see what that numbers look like, just so, the linear mind wants to say, oh yeah, prove it. I'm telling you, I'm trying to prove it. Okay, only 0.4% of the world's population ever reaches this level of evolutionary consciousness. That's okay, don't judge us. We're just here, we're gods, godding. Because, we were like mighty spirit. We're like, I'm tired of being mighty spirit. I'm going to dive off this platform and I'm going to jump into the mud. This is my little metaphor for life. We're all powerful spirits. We're hanging out in heaven or wherever, looking down at earth on this giant, diving board. And we're looking down. And we're like rats in a maze. And we're agreeing to be a rat in the maze. I'm like, I'm going to be a rat in the maze because, I already know the truth of me. I'm loving and powerful and all that. But like, I want to dumb it down big time and see if I can experience that in the body, which is what God in conversations with God's like. He's like, I just want to feel what it's like to be me in the body. So we dive off the diving board and we decide what that maze is going to look like. It could be a simple, like, one fork in the road that meets, and, you have a good life. Or you have this ridiculous maze like I have to get through. So that's my metaphor for life. And now we're going to, unconditional love is even higher than just plain old love. Okay. It begins to be experienced as inner joy. We can all have these experiences for sure. But I got to get to the point now because we're running out of time. Well, let me tell you, however, joy, pure joy, is huge. But not if you're not ready for it. I didn't know what I was asking for when I was in that joy and fearful at the same time. Okay. Because I was in a very different dimension, so to speak, a different way to perceive. And if you have fear going on in your in your aura, for example, which we all do, you don't necessarily, you can create a mess, which I did. I created a mess. Because I was experiencing pure joy, which is holy moly, amazing grace. It's amazing grace. But then I got fearful about the other things I was experiencing, which is what goes on at this level. You experience things quickly. Manifestation is fast. It's almost scary. I'm like, oh, okay, whoa. And then you think you're, running with the devil. Because you got fear running from, your Catholic upbringing or whatever. All right. Okay, this is the domain of saints and advanced spiritual students and healers, which is not to say you guys aren't there, but you got to get honest with yourself. All right. I don't have time for all the chakra stuff because I want to get to the point of how do you get happy? If you're focused on your heart, though, I do want to point this out. You focus on that heart energy. It's got a lot of power there, you guys. Lots of power. But you got to power up those root, sacral, and shoulder plexus. That's the problem with all of us. According to a bunch of healers, that sacral chakra of ours needs TLC. Our society is weak there. We're weak in the root chakra if we don't feel safe. Okay, so this is oh shoot, I don't really have time for this, but I'll do it quick. All right, you got to get a hold of truth versus falsehood because it's an encyclopedia of fun. It gives you all these great calibrations, and you can start understand what's going on. So, literary works of authors. This is not the author's calibration, it's their work. Charles Dickens, you want to read him. Virginia Woolf, read her. Shakespeare is all about the love. Okay? Geniuses. This is a good one to realize. Psychiatrists Carl Jung and Freud were at 499. Einstein was at 499 as well. And what you need to understand is 400s is the level of the intellect. And there's a glass ceiling there. You got to let go of the intellect if you're going to enter the domain of spirit, which is at 500. Spirit and love, which is the higher truth. But we're still in a society that's, of reason, which is good. You got to be of reason too. You can't skip over reason. You have a problem, like I did. All right, so Einstein's at 499 as well, but he was tinkering on knowing, for sure, and some of the stuff that he did. All right, energy of music. Some of this one, Beach Boys, 400. That's cool. You want to hang out with them? The Bee Gees. All right, this was my favorite group. All I listened to was love music when I was a teenager. No wonder. Bee Gees. Louis Armstrong. He's super powerful. Holy moly. Louis Armstrong, he's almost at the level of peace. That's huge, his music. I'm going to have to go back and listen to it. Rolling Stones. You think they're hard rockers, but no, they're good. They got good vibes going on. Disco, it's just fun. Hip-hop is good. Gangster rap, not so much. You don't want your kids you don't want to listen to this stuff. You're asking to be pulled into that field. If you don't want to get pulled into that field, don't listen to it. By putting your attention on any of these fields, you're asking for it. So decide what you're asking for. Although I have to say, I do love some of my AC/DC songs. Highway to Hell, it's just kind of funny. That's probably why I went there. I like that song so much. Okay, this is good stuff. United States, presidency. The office of the presidency is 460, not the person. Our government is 440. The people of the United States are 420. We're all good, but this is as a group. Remember, there could be two people at a very high calibration that offset the negativity of everyone else. So if you're sitting there highfalutin thinking you're 420 without addressing the negativity going on in your head, it's unlikely you're this high. That's a high calibration. East Coast, West Coast, California, a little flaky. Midwest is where to be, gang. I love my Midwestern people. They're loving those guys. What do you think the highest calibrating state is? All right, I'm going to go over time here, but because I want to get to how to be happy. Oh, we'll get there. All right, anyone want to guess what the highest calibrating state is? We got any guesses there? Heather?
Colorado?
Close. Close.
What's that? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Colorado?
No.
Oh.
Close, though. I'll give you a hint. It's close.
Arizona?
Hi, Linda. Good to see you. No, it's Wyoming. Wyoming calibrates at 440. Good, clean living going on in Wyoming. All right, Shirley, you got to mute everyone. Someone's making a lot of noise. All right. So we've got to get down to the whole happy. Let's get to it. Don't worry. Just be happy. Okay. Everyone just says be happy. I'm like, yeah, okay. you got to give a lot of attention to being happy, but it's a little hard to do when you're still dwelling on negativity. So I'm with you guys. Just be happy. I was in lower levels of consciousness where I'm like, oh yeah, right. I didn't believe it. Like I did know, because I'm kind of like naturally optimistic and fun, but when you're in the depths of hell, you're like, really? I felt pretty abandoned there, let me tell you. I was a big victim. Whoop. All right. So, our biggest obstacles to happiness, according to Hawkins studies and many other studies, is a lifetime buildup of suppressed and repressed emotions. And we don't know how to deal with it. So we carry around a huge reservoir of negative feelings and attitudes and beliefs. That's the problem. That's the obstacle to our being happy. And this accumulated pressure makes us miserable and is the basis of many illnesses and problems. So we seek to escape it constantly. We don't want to face our feelings. That's the problem. You're unwilling to face your feelings. And let me tell you, just because you have the feeling doesn't mean they're true, and they're not true. And in fact, if Hawkins were to calibrate you and the feelings that you had, they would calibrate as not true. And what do I mean by that? You could have had something happen in your childhood, some traumatic event. Now you hold a belief about it, shame and blame and guilt and fear. And now you have millions of thoughts that build upon that, and then more experiences to prove it, because you're still holding these negative beliefs about yourself. So the way to freedom and happiness is to stop repressing the feelings, stop suppressing the feelings, stop expressing the feelings to everybody else, right? Expression is not, apparently, according to Hawkins, people misconstrued Freud's teachings of how to, about expression. So you don't want to express your feelings. You want to take responsibility for your feelings and just be with them. So we're going to talk about letting go. And this is Hawkins' book here, right there, Letting Go. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit. So it couldn't be simpler. And Hawkins said that this, well, first of all, let me tell you, Dr. Hawkins was the leader of the largest psychiatric practice in Manhattan. Huge. He saw immense suffering. And he's brilliant. And he learned this technique. It's called the mechanism of letting go. And we're going to learn it today. And I'm just going to read the passage real quick because it's super simple. So letting go involves, so this is how you're going to be happy, gang. You got to follow this technique. And then first of all, you got to step into courage about how you feel. You can't ignore it. You can't bury it anymore. Okay? And you don't want to throw up all over someone with it unless you need help. Okay? You don't want to express anger and resentment at somebody else. You need to manage how this feeling comes up. And this is where a therapist would be helpful. And this is where tapping is helpful, because if you decide to tell life that you're ready to step into truth, now attractor fields of truth are coming around you because you're coming into courage. And just like law of attraction, these energy fields are coming into you. Here they come. Courage. You're going to feel it. And when you read the definition of courage, which I did when I felt it, it's verbatim. Like when you read levels of consciousness and you step into it, your feeling is verbatim. Perspective changes. Okay? So letting go involves being aware of the feeling. You have a feeling coming up. You let it come up. You stay with it. And you let it run its course. Now, sometimes those feelings can be intense, which is where you need to kind of break it down and get help. Tapping is very helpful when you come across intense feelings. And you could speak to Marie about EFT tapping if you need help. There's plenty of resources online about the effectiveness of tapping. And I use tapping quite a bit because I experienced serious anxiety because I couldn't face what I faced again. I'm like, please, God, don't let me face that again. I can't do it. So I learned how to tap, and that was helpful. Major life crises, death of someone in the family, loss of a job, divorce, all of those create these negative attractor fields because you're down in those lower realms because you're telling yourself something that's not true based on your reservoir of negative feelings, attitudes, and guilt, right? I'm going to stop sharing the screen. We don't need to look at this at the moment. So, so you're going to let this feeling come to the surface because you're encouraged right now and you're willing to face the truth about yourself, okay? And I'm going to tell you, I've been through a lot of this, so I've had a lot of practice, and I think the whole point of me going through this is so I can tell you the process, all right? You'll come into fear about some things, and you'll get scared. And I've been scared because I'm like, oh my God, no, I can't face that again. God, don't let me face that again. I can't do it. And then I'm realizing what Hawkins is telling me, that this is reservoirs of fear coming up. They just need to come out. It's like you got to let the air out of the tires. Too much friggin' pressure there, you're going to blow a gasket. Okay? So I want you to remember this. Every time a feeling comes up, you feel like you don't like the thought behind it. That's the only way the mind knows how to deal with it, is give you a thought about it. It's not true. Okay? It's old patterns of whatever. So sit with the feeling and remember the thought is not true. It just needs to come out. That's it. It's all it needs. It needs to come out and let loose. That's all that has to happen. It takes practice to let the feelings come up. And I pray all the time. I'm like, God, whoever you want to pray to, life, Buddha. I love the Buddha. Can't help it. Like, get the Buddha on my side. He's at 1,000. And like, I don't need to be there with the Buddha, but I'm happy just to be willing to accept. Okay. You look at those levels of consciousness: willingness, acceptance, reason, and love. That's where I kind of stay. I stay in those areas. I'm good with that. I'm willing to accept I have the power to be loving and reasonable. And I gosh darn it, I love myself. All right. So I didn't want to go over another minute, but that's just kind of, if you get Hawkins' book, and a lot of people don't get it because they're not there yet, but it's very helpful because it's of higher consciousness, and it's going to align you with higher attractive fields, which is what you want. Bottom line, and I realized this when I started to do this work for myself, the biggest enemy, an obstacle to our happiness, is our own beliefs about ourselves. They're not true, any of them. None of them are true. And when Hawkins talks about truth versus, so lower levels of consciousness are not, it's not that they're the opposite of truth, there's just don't hold any truth in them. There's no truth in them. And love is the truth. You are love, and eternal is the truth. And you got to embrace that, even though you're not there yet. And there's just one other thing I want to share with you. And this has to do with, it is all a perspective. And if you're having a negative perception of a situation or yourself, you're in a lower consciousness about it. And Hawkins has this great example about a little car, bumper, a little bumper in your car with somebody. You have a little accident. Someone at the level of shame would perceive this. They would say to themselves, how embarrassing. I'm such a lousy driver. I can't even park a car. I'll never amount to anything. That's one perception of someone who had a fender bender, right? They're shaming themselves and feeling guilty. Whereas someone who is willing and loving, let's see what someone who is loving would say. Someone who is loving would say, I hope the guy isn't upset. I'll calm him down, right? Relax, it's okay. We've both got insurance, no worries. Okay, that's a giant leap from shame and blame. So pay attention to the judgments and the perceptions you have. And if they're negatively oriented, that's when you stop and say, okay, what's the feeling underlying this that's going on with me right now, and can I let it go? And sometimes understanding how to let go, I've had a little problem with that. It's like if I'm angry, should I be angry? I'm like, yes, be angry. And I find when I am angry, then there's relief. And another great example is you get in a fight with somebody, and then it turns into hysterical laughter, right? Because you got rid of all the suppressed feelings that was going on into there. So I want to end this and stop the recording, or I'll stop the recording, see if anyone has any questions. And I'm sorry I didn't have more time because this is an important topic. Understanding how to be happy is you got to let go of all negativity you're holding about yourself. You are betraying yourself. And Kana shared a great video the other day with, is it Brene Brown or Renee Brown? Cheryl, do you know her name? Is it Brene or Renee? With a B?
Brene, B-R.
Yeah.
Brene.
She shared a video about you got to be willing to stop betraying yourself and letting others try to betray you too. You got to be who you are and stop shooting all of yourself. When you start doing this type of exercise, there's no more shooting on yourself. That's my experience. Heather, you mentioned that. You feel like you have to be, I don't feel that anymore. I'm like, I'm pretty. And Hawkins case studies that when people use this mechanism of letting go have dramatic breakthroughs. Big time. Financial breakthroughs. Big time, because you're out of your way. You're out of your own way. And realize when you're fiddling around in lower consciousness, you are powerless. You got to look at that map of higher consciousness, and you got to admit you're not even close to being godlike. Well, you are, but you're not, right? We're all godlike in our own way, but you don't have the power of that field. So you got to surrender to that and realize I'm not even God. Just a little bit of that from God would be awesome right now. I could use a little dose, and God is there for you, I promise you. Divinity, whatever you want to call it, life, it calibrates as true that life is always looking for the highest good. But when you are choosing negative attractor fields, you're saying no to life. That's your choice. That's your free will. And some of us are here to choose that for others because they're living examples of what we don't want, which we need. We need to see the difference. So I think that's all I wanted to share. But Brene Brown, there's a good video. She talked about not betraying yourself, and that's what we're all doing because we don't know any better. And when you find yourself beating yourself up trying to let go, which I have done, I've been beating myself up over trying to let go and really be a powerhouse about it. The whole right side of my body is in severe pain. I'm like, what's going on? And I looked up in Louise Hay's book about the right side of the body, having a lot of pain in the right side of the body. And it has to do with letting go. And I'm like, it's like I'm using the male energy to let go. And then I realized I need to have love and compassion for this process. I'm only human. And the minute I started to say I need to have love and compassion for this process, the pain went away. So, I manifest these things quickly, gang. So I'm just kind of sharing what I can. If anyone has questions or you want to open it up, Cheryl, we can open everybody up.
Yes. And you were going to share a link with us, Liz. You mentioned at the end.
Thank you. Let me get the links and then see if anyone has questions.
So I unmuted everyone if you have a question for Liz or
raise your hand in case we have a swarm of people wanting to chime in. Like, who are you to be the trumpeter of truth? You know that movie with A Few Good Men with Jack Nicholson and Tom Cruise? You can't take the truth. I love that. You can't take the truth. I'm not saying that to you guys, but I thought it was funny. It was Jack Nicholson's character who couldn't take the truth, really. He had to go with the lower vibe. All right. I just shared Hawkins' website where you can get his book, Letting Go, The Pathway to Surrender, and then Truth versus Falsehood is an encyclopedia of calibrations, which is so fun to see where books are at, where movies are at, music, governments, where government stood on different policies, especially 9/11 is very interesting. George Bush's handling of 9/11 calibrated like 470. It's very high. whether you judged him poorly or not, he knew what he was doing. Okay. Great book. I'm going to share, let me get these links, you guys, to all of this good stuff. I'm sharing the 12-step program, and I want you to take a look at it and read it because it's powerful. And I want you to take a look at it and read it from the point of view that you are addicted to self-condemnation and victimhood. I am. I'm willing to admit it. I'm tired of it, though. It's really a bore. Like, life is a bore when you're a victim. It's like, really? Nothing goes your way. There's no power. There's no love. There's no fun and lightness. And when you start to enter these into courage, into the simple higher levels, everything else doesn't matter. Money matters, but it doesn't matter that much. Being happy is more fun. Enjoying what you're doing. Not having to feel like you should do anything. That goes away, Heather. It goes away. It's kind of nice, right? And you got to stand up for yourself. This is what women are all, well, men have the same problem. Men are in lower consciousness as much as we are. We're all suffering. You can't, it's not, men are suffering in different ways, which is why they've been trying to control us because they're suffering. They're afraid of whatever it is. I don't know. I should be we should be testing the truth of this with others, not just blurting it out. But I think it's true that we are all suffering, and that's clear by the fact that 85% of the planet is suffering and in victimhood one way or another. So we can clean that up. All right. So I shared that. If you read that 12-step thing, I'm telling you, it's powerful when you step into the integrity and you're going to take responsibility for yourself and apply the same thing to victimhood or pride. Being right is a low vibe, gang. Trying to prove that you're right is going to bring you down into the bucket of crabs. and they're going to bite you and scar you for life. You don't want that. Being neutral, I learned this young in life because I owned a restaurant and I served a lot of tough New Yorkers on vacation. I learned how being neutral was super powerful. I didn't know what I was doing at the time, but it worked. Like, I didn't have to be right about anything. And then I could offset the negativity. I could diffuse the bomb of a nasty New Yorker. This is not a hasty generalization of New Yorkers. They're just living the tough life, but you diffuse that bomb, right? Being neutral, not having to be right is freeing. So freeing. It's fun not having to be right. It's like, life is good. All right, one last thing I want to share is Dr. Hawkins has tons of videos on YouTube, short ones. There are a lot of short ones. This is a long one. And this is Hawkins going through every level of consciousness with you in front of a group that is looking to help Alcoholics Anonymous and addicts. You got to understand when you understand what addiction is and what's going on there, this is how I came to understand how I created what I did, experiencing high-level consciousness and then the depths of hell, because in the middle of that was fears and beliefs that I was undeserving of God's presence and divinity. And when you're at that high level of power, you're fueling that. Like, yeah, that's like, whoops. You do not want to do that. You want to get rid of all of these negative limiting beliefs about yourself before you enter the kingdom of God, let me tell you. It's a little messy because you're given mixed signals. And when you're giving mixed signals at a high level, it's like, and that's what's happening in Alcoholics Anonymous. People are experiencing higher levels of joy when they're drunk, some of them, right? Or they're feeling a high and they're giving the power to the alcohol. That's a huge mistake. And I was giving the power of my high to someone outside of me. That's a huge mistake. You don't want to do that because you're the creator. And I heard that too. I heard that loud and clear when I was in the midst of horror. Spirit said to me, "You are the creator, Liz." I'm like, oh crap. Get me out of here. All right. So anyway, you guys can go unless you have questions. I'm here to answer questions and help you because I want you to be happy. I want you to stop shooting on yourself. Stop judging yourself, absolutely, because none of it's true. It's old garbage. And just because you feel it and you have these negative thoughts about yourself, it's just a reminder that the energy is still there and needs to come out. That's it. Voila. All right.
Thanks so much, Liz.
Thanks, you guys. Christy, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Macy, yay, thank you for joining us.
That was great.
Oh, I'm glad you liked it. Macy, would you like to come speak to our group? I'd love to have you do the love advantage.
Yes, I would love it.
I have a date for you. I'll talk to you later.
Okay.
I'll talk to you next Friday.
Yes.
Cool. All right.
Bye.
Bye, you guys.
Bye.
Cheryl, thank you.
Thank you, Liz.
Yep. John, thanks for joining us today. What are you up to this week, John?
I'm going to play around in Tucson, and then I'm going to go home and go back to work.
Oh, go back to work. Okay.
Yeah. Life is really good. And you know, one of the things that you came up for me when you were chatting was that I think that people are, that it's easier for them to be in fear, and it's not necessarily easy for them to take responsibility and understand that even the challenges and the pains that we know and that we feel are there for us to learn our lessons from.
Yeah.
And if we can be neutral about it, like you said, then maybe we can find our way to not only be reasonable about it, but really find the joy even in difficult situations.
Yeah.
And, thank you so much for sharing what you did. I think it was a real blessing. I got a lot out of it.
I'm glad you did. Go where the power is. That's all I got to say. Power Rangers, courage, and neutral. That's a great start for everyone. Courage and neutral. It's a good starting point.
See you later.
Thanks, John.